Welcome to MFP Live. I'm Donna Ladd, the editor and co-founder of the Mississippi Free Press. And as always, my co-host, co-founder, partner of the Mississippi Free Press, Kimberly Griffin, is here with me.
Hey,
Hello.
hey.
And then we have two special guests tonight to talk to us about whatever they want to talk to us about. But we have a feeling that within that, the subject of immigration will come up because of what these two power women do. Carla Vazquez is a paralegal, right? An interpreter. She's going to tell you more about herself because I actually think that underplays a little bit the very powerful role that she plays in our community. She also, by the way, happens to be on the MFP advisory board. Should mention that. And then Abigail Peterson is an attorney who works with Carla, and you guys are both based here in Jackson, I believe, if I'm right about that. Neither of you is working remotely, but so we're really excited to have both of you here tonight. Welcome, guys.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation. We're really happy to be here.
Well, we are tickled to have you. We've been talking about having you for a while, as you know, and all of us trying to get our schedules together. So what I want you guys to do, both of you do very powerful, impactful work. I know Carla's story, at least somewhat, about how you kind of ended up doing this in Jackson. But I know that our viewers and listeners on the podcast will really enjoy hearing about your story. And then Abby, if you could then, after Carla, if you could just kind of kick in there and tell us how you ended up doing the work that you're doing now and really how the two of you ended up working together. So if you want to start us out, Carla, that'd be great.
Okay, well, thank you so much again for the invitation. And my name is Carla Vasquez. I'm originally from Mexico. I'm a licensed attorney in Mexico. And I decided to come to Mississippi to study at Mississippi College. My intention, it was not going to stay here, just to be clear. It was just to study, get a master's degree, and go back to Mexico. But being here in Mississippi gave me the opportunity to meet different attorneys and to get involved in the Hispanic community. At that time, I was able to meet some stranger attorney that later on turned out to be my husband. And I get really excited to start a life here. And we begin to work together, helping the Hispanic community. Right now, my role here at the firm, I work for Elmore and Peterson, and that's how I work with Abby, is to work together with Hispanics and help them to go through the law and through courts and help them in the needs that they have. We have different type of cases. And for example, right now with the COVID, we're trying to help people to guide them to go through the process to make appointments, to go and trying to understand, to go to the doctor is okay. So it's how I start more interest to be here in the state. Actually, I work with the Mexican consulate. We are the law firm, we're the legal advisors. So that helps us to help more connationals and to guide them because their language barrier is what they have more issues to go through. If you're coming from another country, definitely you don't know nothing about the law. If you come from another country, you don't know how to speak. I still have problems. Sometimes Abby doesn't understand what I'm saying or my own husband. So definitely there are some issues there. But here I'm a paralegal and I try to help in the courts to interpreter. And many of the courts, the judge asked me to help them with the process and be an interpreter for them. Is how I'm here, general.
So I guess it's my turn to talk about myself. So I grew up in Tennessee and then ended up going eventually to college in Texas. And as everyone knows, the immigration in Texas is a hot button issue. Just because it's right there on the border. And I was in San Antonio, and after college ended up working with an immigration attorney, not necessarily because I was interested in doing immigration law, but I was interested in law school. And I had spent a lot of my college years studying other cultures in different regions in the world. And so I found kind of an immigration law way to combine those two interests. And so after working for a year in Texas in immigration law, I decided to go on to law school, not necessarily to stay in that field, but to do something with international law. But I kept falling into immigration law, finding cases, different employment opportunities, doing that. And I just really liked it. And so after law school, I was given an opportunity to come back down south, and not to Tennessee, but to Mississippi. And that's been my home ever since. And so shortly after I moved to Mississippi, I met Carla and her husband, and through a series of events, Nathan, her husband, my business partner, he and I decided I joined his firm, and then we became business partners. And now we all work for Abigail Peterson law firm, and we do various types of law. Nathan practices criminal defense, workers' comp, personal injury, and that sort of thing. And then all that I do is immigration. It's my focus. It's what I'm interested in, and it's my passion. And so that's what we've been doing I've been doing it here for more than 10 years. And so with this firm, and so it's been really good to us. And we've met a lot of people in the community, and we've expanded our staff, and things have changed a lot through the years, as everyone knows just from reading headlines and whatnot. But it's been really good.
You know, Abby, listening to you, you were saying that you didn't really start out trying to work in immigration law, right? That kind of happened. And so I'm kind of curious how that, and it sounds like now that's what you specialize in. I mean, what kind of impact did that have on your life? And, you know, why have you chosen to specialize in immigration law?
Well, so like I said, when I went to college, my interest was in studying other cultures. So cultural anthropology was kind of what I fell into, which is kind of a dead end in terms of career path, but it was what my interest was. And so in working with immigrants, I get to learn about, you know, their backstory, the countries that they come from, the cultures that they grew up in, and how that meshes with the culture here. And it's just a really good way of combining my personal interests with my professional interests. And so it's worked out really well.
So I know one of the things I want to point out to people is immigration is more than just the Latinx community. The Latinx community is not monolithic, and you guys are dealing with, I presume, kind of immigration issues from a number of different countries, cultures. What do we, the public, need to know about immigration in Mississippi during the time of COVID? What would you have us know? And I'll ask Carla first, and then Abby, you can answer.
Sure. Actually, immigration is so broad, and Abby can tell you about that. And definitely the population, we're not only Hispanics, we're not only Latinos. I mean, if you look deeply, you are going to have people from India, people from Russia, you have a lot of different communities here in the state. But focusing on the Latino community, that is the community that I'm and I'm really deep involved. I can tell you that with this COVID has been a tremendous challenge for the people. I mean, like I say a minute ago, we handled problems with the language barrier. If you're trying to set them up an appointment and you tell them to set up an appointment online to do a COVID test, everything is in English.
Wow.
They can't do it. Medical attention. Sometimes they're afraid to go to the doctor to provide their personal information because they believe that they're going to share that information with others. Financial assistance. A lot of people, they're losing their job for the COVID. I mean, the main job of the Hispanics, and talking about the Hispanic community, there are hotels, there are the poultry industry, and there are the restaurants. And those industries, they have been affected tremendously. I mean, restaurants are closing, people they're getting fired, hotel business, because we have a lot of housekeeping, they're getting fired because they're not business. And I have so many clients that I hear their stories, and they have bills to pay, they have kids to feed. When the kids they were unable to go to school, they count with the meal that they give them in the school, like the breakfast that they provide in the school is one more meal to buy, and they were unable to get those. So mental health is going through them, for the parents, for the kids. There has been a lot of issues with this COVID. And right now there has been more than a year. They're still having hard time, to recuperate for that issues.
Yeah, I think Carla makes a good point with, sorry, I'm hearing an echo. She makes a good point with like the employment for a lot of our clients. A lot of the immigrants in this area are here because it's through an employment-based visa. And so, especially last year when the economy was hit so hard, a lot of people lost their jobs. And by losing their jobs, they lost the way in which they could legally stay here. And so, when something like that happens, you're not given much of a cushion in terms of leaving the country. When you lose your job, you're given a very short amount of time in which to either find another job that fits within this certain category, or to leave because that visa is no longer valid. And so that really impacted a lot of people. And when you think about just them, that's one thing, but a lot of them have been here with their spouse or their children that are in school. And when the primary loses their job, then that means those derivatives are going to lose their ability to stay as well. And so it has a ripple effect that's pretty significant. So we have seen that, and there's a lot of visas that have been affected by this, and by that, the immigrants. So, you think about students, when this has been mostly remedied at this point, but when a lot of the schools went virtual, and there was a debate on how that should be handled. If a school was completely virtual, should that person be allowed to get a visa to come here, since you don't actually have to be here to attend school? And so at first that was something that was pretty hot in the news. I can't even remember when it was last year, because at first they rolled out and said, no, that person doesn't need a visa to be here because it's a completely virtual school. At that point, they can just do it from their home country. But since then, that's been remedied. And as well, most schools are at least a hybrid, and so not completely virtual. But things like that have really had a big impact across Mississippi, across the whole country, really.
And what about people who were in the process of securing legal status? Maybe they were still in their home country, or they were trying to transition from undocumented. Kind of what's going on with that population?
Yeah, there have been so many changes. It's hard to figure out exactly what to talk about because there's so many of them. But one big impact for a lot of our cases has been through consular processing. And so when, for example, a U.S. citizen is bringing their family members who are not U.S. citizens to this country to live permanently, they have to go through a process through the U.S. consulates and the U.S. embassies. And those were shut down during COVID, not just through presidential proclamations, which they were, but also because there were outbreaks and because these people couldn't get to their offices. And so there has been a tremendous backlog buildup. There was already a tremendous backlog, but it's been glacial movement. We're starting to see movement now. It's glacial, but we're starting to see movement, which is good. But that has been very frustrating for a lot of people who have been in this process for years and years and thought they were near the finish line, only for that finish line to move even further away. And another is that we had some clients that got issued visas right when travel became impossible. And if you don't enter on those visas during that period of time, you have to start over in that visa application. We've had one case in particular where it's stalled out for years now. And so we hope that that's going to get sorted out. But as everyone knows, it's hard to predict when the end of this is going to come, or when we'll get used to it enough that we know how to navigate around it. And so it's really had a big impact.
And it's not only in immigration. I'm talking about with the cases that we handle at the firm, like a child custodies. We have a lot of parents that they just travel by themselves, and it's only one parent here. If you want to enroll them in a school, you need to have a guardianship. You need to have a legal document to prove that you are only the sole parents. So you have the custody of the child. And like Abby mentioned, the course has been closed. So they don't have the legal document to register the kids in a school, or to take them to the doctor, or if they need a passport. I mean, passport for their own country. If you don't have the document, they cannot provide a passport. And sometimes they cross the border and they lose all the paperwork on the way. They don't have no identities. They don't have anything to prove. You go to the consulate and the consulate say, okay, I need a document to prove that you're the only parent. Otherwise, we need to have paperwork from the parent in Guatemala and El Salvador to send it back. And this just make it so hard for the kids and for the parents, because it's nothing that we can do. The courts were closed, but like Abby said, thank goodness they're moving along and they're trying to do their best. But it has been affected tremendously. People that they are in jail, I mean, they don't have courts, and they're spend months right now because they don't have hearings. And it's nothing that we can do. So, and how do you explain that? So definitely all the areas has been affected, but for us, it's hard to explain to the client. For there is one more step to go through, and they just need to be patient.
I do have a question for people. I don't know exactly how the consulate works. If you could explain for our viewers, like I understand what an embassy does. I have no idea what the consulate does. I see it on spy movies sometimes, and but that's all I know.
So yeah, so that's it's like a smaller version of it. So if you know what the embassy does, the consulates usually have a smaller operation out of which they can do something similar. So a lot of the fingerprint appointments that we have clients undergo for background checks in other countries, they're going to consulates in order to do that. And so a lot of the consulates have shut down. And so kind of relating to what Carla was saying, where maybe one agency is saying you have to, in our situation, one agency is saying, okay, we're ready to process this, go get your fingerprints taken. And so we're going over here to country A and saying, okay, our client has to get fingerprints to satisfy this agency over here. And the Department of State at the consulate is saying, okay, well, that's great, but we're closed right now for biometrics. For fingerprints. And so they're the same, these agencies communicate with each other, but they don't communicate well enough to navigate that. And so we become the go-between to relay messages back and forth to the person requesting it, saying, hey, we can't get this. And then having to go over here because we've been given a deadline by which we have to get it. And so we've been trying to patch it with things that are open. So for instance, say we have a client in Nicaragua and they can go to their police department to get a clearance record or a background check, but they can't go to our consulate to get one, then that's what they'll do instead. And we've tried to submit those as kind of a patch in between to just continue the processing. We realize that they're going to have to get biometrics done through our government at some point, but we're hoping that it doesn't result in a complete stall out of the case. And so it's to be seen yet if that's going to work, but we're hoping that as this continues to be an issue we're having to grapple with, that they'll be willing to accept these sorts of things, at least in the interim.
So, one of the things that came up, Mauricia, who does some writing for us, had done a series of stories kind of early in COVID that was really going inside the realities And I know Carla has seen them playing her advisory board role over there. But and those stories touched on a lot of different things. But one of the obvious themes through them was safety, and safety from COVID, and whether it was safety like in poultry plants or wherever people are working, as well as, I want to get to talking a little bit about ICE detainees and their safety. But so I guess I'm curious from either of you, what that looks like, what your concerns are beyond what you've already said, Carla, because I know you said, the safety precautions and such, being in English instead of, the messaging. But I guess I'm just wondering about more specifics about that. Do you feel like that has gotten better, or is it just kind of an ongoing problem? Is it magnified, particularly for undocumented immigrants?
To be honest, I believe that it's still growing. I believe that this still is an issue, as you mentioned, on the chicken plants. Mm-hmm. We have several clients that before COVID, they were not even the company, they don't giving outfits on their size to wear. They only, we have one client that in the whole COVID, they only give her one mask. And she's like, I don't know. And it's a lot of misunderstanding because they cannot lose one day of work. For them, if you don't go to work, you can feed them. So in the poultry plants that we has been seeing before, they don't provide all the equipment. Right now with the COVID, they has been telling me that basically the stations that they have is just, they're not cleaning the areas for the station like it needs to be regularly. And it's just something that big companies, they need to be aware. They don't do COVID test to them. Like I say, this client that we have, and we talk with her, she said, no, I never been doing a COVID test because they ask me a lot of personal questions and I don't want to give them. So it's not mandatory for them. I believe that right now, restaurants are coming back and they trying to do the best. I really believe that the owners and the workers, if they needs to follow instructions, they will do it because they need that money. So definitely is a lot of issues between taking care of the health and make money for my family. And with their own salary, they buy their own gel, they're buying their own masks so they can go back to work.
Well, I know that when Mauricio did the story that's on the screen right now, there's a lot in that story, but it's about a family that dealt with COVID, but poultry plants and I don't know, just kind of going inside the stories like he was able to do, it really made me think about just the number of barriers that are put up for undocumented immigrants and the fear that they're living in, about being found out and what, they're afraid to do, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but afraid to take care of, perhaps, because I think you alluded to something, because are people going to then expose them in some way? And then you can't help but think about what you're talking about. It's like, then what do employers or companies get away with as a result of that? Because people are afraid to do anything about it. So I guess, Abby, I would be curious, from the legal side, I don't know what you can say about that, but just talk a little bit about those challenges that people have, just kind of getting basic human rights in a time like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just adds another level of fear. So if we're talking about the undocumented immigrant population, not even just the undocumented immigrant population, because I don't want to just focus on that,
Right.
because there's also a whole larger layer of people that are on visas that are dependent on their jobs. And those are people as well that are going to probably be hesitant to step forward and request certain things. And so certainly I think that like y'all are saying, this is something that has really impacted them, aside from the fact that there's the normal struggles that everybody's having, not just the immigrant population, and then there's the disinformation that we're dealing with. But yeah, I mean, these people have to hopefully realize or talk to advocates that can explain to them that regardless of your immigration status, you know, you do have the same labor rights that other employees have, and you do have the right to these health standards, these safety standards that other employees have as well, and that just because you have a visa or you're undocumented or whatever does not mean that your health should be jeopardized. And so it's a hard thing for a lot of people to come forward and deal with when their livelihood depends on it. But, you know, we have seen some people that are willing to step forward and share their story. And then there's people that are just taking it into their own hands. So like Carla was saying, you know, they're going out and buying their own masks, they're going out and buying their own hand sanitizer, they're getting vaccinated and that sort of thing. And that's good. And that's good that they're taking that step forward for themselves and being responsible for themselves. It's good to see that. We have unfortunately had some clients that passed as a result of COVID, and it has been really hard on a lot of people. And so it's good when we can see everybody else doing what they can to protect themselves and the people around them.
So I'm always thinking practically. So what resources are available? So if I have a friend who, for example, needed COVID information in Spanish or in some other language, or needed help with masks, what does one do right now if they need those kinds of help with testing, trying to navigate all that? Where do you go?
Carla's answering.
Carla,
I think she's muted.
I think
though.
you're on mute. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
I'm sorry. We work with the Mexican consulate and we're really close to them. And the thing that they're doing, they're getting really close with different clinics, hospitals, universities, and they provide that in their same consulate, in the same place that the people go and make passports. They go to the doctors, do vaccinations, do COVID tests in their own language, and with the protection of the Mexican consulate. So the people, they are not afraid to get vaccine or to get a COVID test. When they go to these meetings that they're not meetings, they do like a 2-3 times per week or on the weekends, this service, and they give them gloves, they give them a mask, they provide them with all pamphlets in Spanish. The thing that they're doing here in Mississippi, they has been doing virtual hall meetings, and is with the Mississippi Department of Health. They has been doing Zooms in Spanish, and they provide all the information where they can go, how they contact an interpreter, and I will be happy later on share that information with you. In the coast, they have Magnolia Medical Foundation in Mississippi, and it's a place that is a nonprofit, and they has been helping people, Hispanic people, to set up an appointments, to give a COVID test, to have vaccinated, to let them know what is the best places to get vaccination. And they have organization nonprofit too that they call El Pueblo, and they help people to do that. At the office, personally, I've been doing several appointments to different clients and for their friends or family members to have COVID tests done at UMC. And for example, that they don't know where to go to get vaccinated, we are happy to help them. I mean, we don't charge for that. We do it happily. We're trying to help them and we try to guide them, give them phone numbers, how they can assist them. Worst case scenario is when they're really sick and they need to go to the hospital. We really encourage the people to don't stay at home, because some of our people that we know, they don't have a medical assistance, they don't have insurance, so they're afraid to go to the doctor because they know it's going to be super expensive for them later on. We highly recommend. We has been hearing conversation with UMC and Dr. Dabbs. He mentioned all the people that have the symptoms go to the hospital, no matter your race, no matter your status. They need to be tested, because if you're sick with COVID, you're going to sick up a lot of people, not just around your house, it's going to be around your community. So if someone have question, get close to your consulate, call us. We'll be happy to give you the information, or contact nonprofit organizations and they will be happy to assist you. And most of the time, churches, Catholic churches, they have people that speak Spanish. They have someone in the community that usually they guide them.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, and I did put I think the link was put up there for the Spanish version of the CDC website, which is really helpful. And I think in addition to the churches and the consulates, which is a really good idea, the schools have been really helpful for families as well. It's a good way to identify immigrant families, and it's a comfortable, I think, a comfortable environment in which to approach people. So that's also been a really good source. And I'll have to give credit to our staff. I don't do it the way that Carla and our other assistants and paralegals do, but they have, if someone calls, client or not, they have been wonderful to go out of their way to help people. And it's, I hope it's made a difference. I think it has. So thank you, Carla.
Time. That's what we do. We're trying to help.
That's
They
right.
have the need, and if we can help them, it's not a problem.
Well, you mentioned schools, and that kind of takes me back to the ICE raids and kind of the how long's it been since the big ICE raid now? Has it been? It's pandemic time. I don't
2
really
years, 2.5 years, yeah,
something like that. Not too long before the pandemic.
2019.
Yeah, and so I have thoughts about some of my thoughts about that is from a media perspective. In the media, we do and did a lot of coverage around the raids and the imprisonment of people, and we've done some follow up. But I think it is, and especially in a pandemic, when in a time when we have so many things we're thinking about, it's very easy to move on to something else, or be thinking about other things. And so I'm kind of wondering from you guys, just kind of what you see as the lay of the land now for the ICE detainees from Mississippi. I mean, have there been, do you have a sense of, whatever do you have a sense of how many of them are still locked up? Has there been progress on helping them in any way? Just kind of update us, I think I'm saying.
Yeah. So numbers, I don't know them. So I would love to. Unfortunately, they're not public like that. But, the detainee population, to my knowledge, let me clarify that, to my knowledge, has reduced significantly during COVID. There's several different reasons for that. One is that if someone can be deemed not dangerous and not a flight risk, then they're trying to get them out of detention. During COVID, because as everybody knows, the rate of COVID when you're incarcerated is much higher. And then as well, enforcement priorities have changed. Now that's something that's being dealt with in the courts and litigated and has changed as recently as just, I think, a day or two ago. So that's something else that's factored into it. But as well, there's not as much immigration to the country, legal or otherwise. There's a lot of restrictions still on travel to the country. It's much more difficult to get around. And so that has also changed the detention policy, or the detention rate for for immigrants, whether it's undocumented immigrants or documented immigrants that are in removal proceedings or what have you. So I do think that that's gone down. But one thing that we did see a lot, especially last year, was an effort to parole those detainees that were deemed not dangerous to society. That was because of several reasons, like I said, but COVID being one of the main ones.
Donna, you're on mute.
This is why I don't mute myself a lot, because I forget to unmute myself, as I tell people every single week, at least one time. But you're talking there about, the changes, and I kind of thought what you were saying was true, but I, didn't have any kind of good sense of it. What other changes, I guess, with, we've had kind of a significant change in federal, U.S. in the White House with the administration. I mean, what does that really look like on the ground for immigrants, and particularly undocumented immigrants?
So there have been some significant changes, I guess you could say, that happened early on, and then it really slowed down, and there haven't been what I would say to be any significant changes since then. So, there were some pretty hot button presidential proclamations under the Trump administration that right at the onset of the Biden administration were reversed. So the quote unquote Muslim ban being one of those. Another thing was the ICE priorities. And so that's kind of what I just mentioned. And so that was one that the Biden administration came out pretty early on, tried to doing something similar to what Obama had done in terms of reprioritizing who we want to put our resources into to get them out of the to get them into removal proceedings and possibly removed from the country. And so that's been another one. However, same thing as what we saw under the Trump administration, we're seeing now where one thing happens and then you put it into court and it's 2 years later and it's the policy's changed so many times from between when it first was changed and it's gone into different court systems. And so same thing. So that the enforcement priorities, while they came out being something similar to Obama's enforcement priorities, now because it's being litigated in the Fifth Circuit, that's not really what we're seeing anymore. Like I said, as recently as a couple of days ago. So we'll see how that plays out. Because as of right now, from what we're seeing on the ground level, ICE has not done much in terms of enforcement. And so whether the Fifth Circuit's decision a couple of days ago, and I say a couple, it might have been yesterday, I can't even remember, how that's going to impact things, we'll have to see. And of course, what these agencies can do during COVID is another thing. I don't know how much manpower they're going to put into going out and doing raid type scenarios or stops when COVID is still as prevalent as it is. And so it's to be seen, but there have been changes, like I said. However, it's not been what I think a lot of people anticipated it would be. So whether you're in favor of that or against that, I don't know. I think it's probably been a little of a disappointment to everybody, no matter your cause. And so we'll see how that works. I think the biggest thing we're seeing right now in terms of problems that have resulted from COVID and changes to policies and laws between Trump and Biden and Obama, between all those administrations, has been just the backlog, the insane backlog that has been created, not just through U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is the agency that adjudicates benefits, but also in the courts, which I think is probably heard about much more in the media. But you're talking over 1 million cases that are just sitting in court for years and years and years waiting on a decision, which doesn't really benefit a whole lot of people. Some people want their cases delayed just because it allows you to stay here during the course of that. But it doesn't, I don't think it does a lot for immigration as a whole. And it really is, when people say it's a broken system, it really is a broken system. And I'm not sure where that ends.
Yeah, I mean, while you were talking, it's I couldn't help but think about the broken system in our local justice system with all the pretrial detainees backed up. It's like I know it's not exactly the same thing, but there's so many systemic problems, right? That I guess if you had a magic wand, is there like one thing or something major that you guys think would just help a lot? Are there solutions that you would suggest?
I mean, I think so much of it is just the way that our government's set up in terms of these red tape things. Like you've got to check all these boxes, and there's so much paperwork that just makes things that should be much simpler. It makes it so complicated. And so where you even begin to change that, I don't know. I can give an example of like the number of form changes we've had just in the last year. I can't count the numbers, but if however, so much of these immigration benefits are based on form applications and that you have to submit in order to start the process. And once a form expires, you can't use it anymore. You'll have one form with 5 changes within a year, and it's a matter of adding a checkbox over here and a checkbox over there. It's so insignificant, but it results in a complete shift of what's required. It's confusing to the applicant. It's confusing to the service center that's receiving these applications. It's just unnecessary red tape. So in terms of things that I would want to change, that would be one of them. How you begin, I don't know. In terms of actual policies that you would have to change, I would love it if we would have an administration that could push through getting rid of the bars that exist. It's a little bit complicated to explain, but there's these 3-year, 10-year permanent bars that prevent people from applying for benefits based on unlawful presence in the United States. And I can understand that you don't want to just waive and ignore the fact that someone's been undocumented in the United States and give them a benefit. But we're talking about, for instance, spouses of U.S. citizens that have a bar and have to jump. They can overcome it, but they have to first jump through 10 hoops of administrative just nightmares that are unnecessary, because we all know where it's going to end. It's going to end with probably an approval, but it's going to take you 4 years to get there and take who knows how much national resources to get there. And it just seems like unnecessary political stuff.
Well, it's so funny you talking about this stuff. I mean, good God, I hate a form. I mean, and what I know, I'm serious about it. And what I have gone through just trying to figure out my own medical bills, and I speak English and I can't even, and I won't do things sometimes because of a form. I mean, I go whining to somebody else to help me so I guess what I'm saying is that I get that, and then they are put through so many hoops, it sounds like, that are just ridiculous,
Yeah, and one of the things with the forms, I don't know what's really in immigration news in my little niche and what's national news, but one of the things over the last 2 years has been this policy to reject blank space forms. So let's say you apply for asylum and you don't have a middle name, and so you leave it blank. You mail it in, they're going to reject it. This was years ago that something similar happened, but years ago I submitted, it was a box, like a huge box of an asylum application with supporting documents and affidavits in it. I can't even remember how much it would cost to ship 10 years ago, but now it would cost easily hundreds of dollars to ship it. And one of the photos didn't have the name written on the back of it. They shipped the entire box back to tell us to write the person's name on it. and it's that sort of absurdity that just makes you want to rip your hair out.
It does. I mean, But Carla, before and then I'll, Kimberly's got a follow up. Jump on in there.
So I think you've sort of answered this question, but I am curious as we were talking, what is your, and I know it's anecdotal because you're not there, what is your understanding of, the flow of undocumented folks coming into the United States right now during COVID? Has it stopped, or do people still want to kind of make some of those more dangerous trips, or is it what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
You mean for like undocumented immigrants across the border? That
Yeah, or however, undocumented immigrants in any aspect. What's that pattern looking like right now?
Yeah, I don't have, and Carl, I'll be curious to hear what you've seen in the news from various sources, but I don't have a good sense of the numbers. I'm skeptical of numbers from all sides when I see them. I can just tell you from what we've seen, which is a tremendous decline in the number of detained cases, which is typically what you get when someone's crossing the border. And so part of that has been a result of the Remain in Mexico policy, also called the Migrant Protection Protocol. Part of that's been the reason, and I think COVID's another reason. So has illegal immigration at the border stopped? No, of course not. Have the numbers declined? I think probably they are less now than they have been in the past, yes, for various reasons. So yes.
Well, regarding you hear a lot on the news regarding the caravans, the people that they coming from Central America, and there are hundreds and hundreds of people. And you hear it on the news. The numbers, like Abby say, I don't have the numbers with me. The only thing that I can tell you is, because we're really close with Mexico and with the news of Mexico, the new president, the thing that they're doing is they put in a border with soldiers, so trying to limit the path from the south, and another one here in the north, in the border. So they trying to work with the government here in the United States. They have been having several meetings with Ms. Kamala Harris, with the vice president. So how we can stop the immigration, because Mexico has been affected too, having a lot of people coming through and staying in Mexico. Mexico doesn't have the infrastructure in the borders to hold that many people that coming from Central America. But yes, people there are still coming, but they have a lot of issues that they need to go through to cross here to the state. And like Abby said, we has been seeing less numbers, but I believe that is for COVID, and because for the new regulations that they are having between both governments to secure the borders.
I want to flip it slightly here. And I think it was Abby who was saying, that there's a lot of things to talk about that have to do with immigrants who are not undocumented as well, right? And so I guess the way I want to frame this is, I kind of like you guys to give media advice on, this is something we talk about a lot. It's like, how can we listen to people saying to the media, this is what you need to be covering. You are not, don't, and I've had people say this to me. So I don't just look for one angle, or don't, how about the joy? How about, just whatever those, whatever it is. I'm not trying to lead you, but I'm curious what you guys would like to see the media do on immigration of any kind, and and what should we maybe do less of as a whole.
Well, for example, right now with DACA is a new air for new kids that they were unable because it was suspended. And Abby, you know better DACA than me, but we have many kids that they get so excited to have again the opportunity to have even a driver license or an ID or a document to stay here in the country, and they can go to school. We have, personally, I have a family. The kid, the son, he was unable to go to school. I mean, he finished high school, great grades, but because he don't have a social security, he was unable to continue his studies to college. And I think all his life he has been here in the States. And don't give this child that has been all A's having this opportunity because he don't have a document continuing with the school. That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can show more these efforts that the people have, if we can show that, I mean, this kid could have finished college, he can make, I mean, a better living and support their families. And they can, I mean, it can be a great citizen here for their country. Another thing that I would like that the news see is people like me. I came here with a visa. I came here, I follow all the regulations. They're hard, like I just say. Follow all these forms, they're hard. Many people come to us to the office and they say, oh, why the people they just don't go and get the papers done? Yeah, if it was that easy, everyone they were having papers. It's not that easy. But people like us, that we follow the regulation, that we continue, now I can say that I have a family. I'm blessed to be here in Mississippi. And the work that I do, I make a difference. And I know there are many people that they can do that here, not just for the state, for the whole country.
You know, one of the things that I've been adjacent to some social justice work, not part of it at all, but I've been sitting in some sessions where they talk about the bureaucracy being a way to control people. Like the more paperwork you give somebody, the more demoralizing it is, the harder it is. It's a way to gatekeep the money. It's a way to gatekeep the status. It's a way to gatekeep the success. It's very similar when people talk about the written word versus the oral word. So the written word in colonial society has more power, but oral history because people said it, it must not be true. So it's interesting to watch, because I am seeing some organizations, they call it decolonizing the process of applying for grants or applying for programs, the essential information only. Because what happens when you do that to folks, it is a legal way to keep people away from integrating into society. That's a soapbox. I don't get me started on these 20-page forms.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
I think that's such a good point, because there's a lot of and I'm an attorney, so obviously I'm going to tell people, hey, you should hire a lawyer. But you should hire a lawyer. There's a lot of cases that have come to us after they've tried to do it on their own, because they went to immigration and said, hey, I want to do this. And immigration handed them a form and they said, here, you just fill this out, not knowing that, yeah, okay, that is a form for how you get employment authorization, but you have to supplement it with, you have to, meet these criteria, and you have to do this, this, and this, and this, this, and this. And so there's a lot of people that are following basic instructions, thinking that all I have to do is fill out this form because that's what the immigration agency told me I had to do on their website. When you go talk to this bot thing over here, and then they've lost their money, and then they've lost their time. And 3 years later, they get a denial, and they go to a lawyer that says, oh, well, this is how you should have done it. And it's going to cost you the same amount of money and take another 3 years. And, 6 years later, finally, their husband or wife is living with him in the United States. But, it's 6 years later. And so, yeah, it is one of those things that disadvantages people based on their education, based on their money, because it is a matter of, do I have the money to hire someone to help me with this? And am I able to follow all these instructions? Because they're very confusing. We're trained in this, and it's still very confusing.
And time is money. It's one of those things where if you can pay somebody to wash your car and you make $100 an hour, that makes sense to you, right? Because why would you wash your car? But if you guys are talking about people, if they can't miss a day of work or they don't eat, taking up a day with this paperwork or whatever paperwork is happening. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox about paperwork.
Well, no, but a quick parenthesis is, and it's just a quick super advice to everyone. Please get close to someone with knowledge and someone that is a certified attorney and licensed attorney. We have many cases that people say, I can fill that out your form. I can help you to submit that, and they pay this amount of money and they take advantage of them. So just always to all the people, like an advice, just be sure who are the person that help you with the papers, because their life, they put it in their hands to be here with a status in the country.
So let's end this very quickly, because on a good note. So what are the Abby? Why don't you tell me? What's the most encouraging thing that you see right now on the immigration front?
The most encouraging thing. I should have been asked that in advance for time to think about it.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
The most encouraging thing, they are talking about immigration reform, and whatever that might take. I really hope that it can benefit these DACA kids. Yeah. They're stuck again right now because of what the courts have done to DACA more recently. And it seems like such an easy thing to reach across the aisle and everybody agree upon. And so I like that there's finally some movement we can see there, and I hope it turns into something. And also, I'll say this, and then I'll stop. But I know that there's some negative news right now about what's happening with the Afghan refugees. But it's to me, it's so nice to see that, not the way that it happened, but that these people that have worked for the U.S. military, that have helped our government over in Afghanistan, are finally able to, after years and years of waiting for visas, have finally been able to get here. The circumstances under which it happened, not great, but they've served this country, and it's nice to see that finally, through one way or another, they're able to come to a safe place.
And Carla, squeak in a real quick, encouraging thing from you that you
encouraging for the government.
No, just for immigration. The immigration,
just
for
the
immigrant community. Yeah.
I just want to let them know that never stop. It's still a light there. It's still, people in the government, they want to help immigrants. Most of the people that I know, they really care, and they really see us like as someone that they're here to do a better country. United States is the best example to show that we're a melted pot full of different cultures, and it's the best country with so many good people. So I really encourage of all the immigrants, never stop. I believe here in the country, in the States, is a country of dreams. So I really feel like immigration is going to move forward. It's not going to be easy, but in the future, they're going to have a better life here.
Well, I'll say this about you, Carla. I'm so tickled that you are here and part of our community. You've met. I don't see you nearly enough, but your counsel and advice and and positive presence is good for us all. So thank you so much. And it was wonderful to talk to you, Abby. We haven't talked in the past. This was just amazing. I think we could talk for another hour, but I learned a lot. I don't know about y'all, but I learned a lot. And then to the viewers out there, remember that the MFP Live is also on YouTube. Please share it after the fact. Share it on Facebook. We get a lot of our viewers after the fact. We're also now a podcast or have a podcast, and you can subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and it's on whatever our other one is that I'm forgetting right now. It's not SoundCloud. I keep trying to say SoundCloud. Oh, that's my kind of day. I'm in the middle of a big project, y'all. But, and also I have to tell you, or I get in trouble, as I always say, we are a nonprofit news outlet. We're kind of turning a year and a half right now, and it's been a packed year and a half of lots of great journalism and a lot of great support from the public. We really appreciate that. If you can donate, that's how we keep doing what we do and spread it even more around the state. That's mfp.ms/donate, as is on the screen right now. And I think that's all my news for now. We'll be letting you guys know about the MFP Live next week. We're still working on confirmation. So follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. And we will see you very soon. Thank you, ladies, so much for being with us
Thank you, Donna.
tonight.
Thank you so much.
You're amazing. Night all.